when Deebo Samuel returns, how will the 49ers use him? It seems to me like Christian McCaffrey is now the focal point of this offense, the way that Deebo used to be, and that Deebo wasn't necessarily having his best season before he went down, and that maybe he'll have a little slightly reduced workload and maybe a different usage as well. What do you think?
I think that I'm very intrigued to see what the role is going to be with Deebo Samuel, because we've seen him in a multitude of roles this year, and we've seen how the wide back role has kind of been erased because teams understand that when Deebo Samuel's in the backfield, we are going to collapse on the pocket to make sure that Deebo Samuel doesn't get a 5-yard, 10-yard carry because they are worried about the explosive play. But now you have two explosive threats out of the backfield. This is why so many fans were excited about Trey Lance, because the zone read, you were able to have multiple options out of the backfield, forcing defenses to think, hesitate for a second. I think you can have an iteration of that with Deebo Samuel now, because you have two explosive threats to where if the defense hesitates, both players can hit the edge and get a 10-yard gain because you're 1 second slow. But the other thing about Deebo Samuel, I think it's a personnel mismatch now. The 49ers can trot out 21 personnel. They can trot out personnel with multiple running backs, with multiple tight ends. That forces defenses to match with more linebackers, with more defensive linemen. And as a result, you're going to have a linebacker on Deebo Samuel, a linebacker on Christian McCaffrey. And every time you have that matchup, it's a favorable matchup. We've already seen Kyle Shanahan's ability to scheme Deebo Samuel out of the backfield on a linebacker. Now imagine that with defenses having to account for another threat. That's why I'm very intrigued to see how does Kyle Shanahan operate with this style of offense. But it's also why I've been saying my margin for excuse has significantly slimmed now, because you have all the pieces. Everything is on the table, and it should become easier. You got to be able to execute now.
Yeah. It's just so interesting because you have all these weapons, but it's not a pass first team. Like, they throw about 31 times per game, and when they're winning, they throw 25 times a game. So all these guys have to buy into, we're blocking, we're getting, we're not getting huge numbers. We've already gotten paid, except for Brandon Ayuk. So we got to be all in with the team. And Kyle has to figure out how to spread the ball around so people are happy. So it seems like Deebo last year was getting, 10 targets a game, or he was getting like 10 touches a game. You could cut him up between targets and carries. Now forget the carries. Forget that. It wasn't working, and now you got Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell, so that's out. And as a receiver, he's not necessarily producing better than Ayuk or McCaffrey. It seems like you got 4 options now in the passing game, and each one sort of deserves 5-6 targets a game, 5 or 6. Right. So that's Deebo now. You're paying 20-something million a year for 5 or 6 targets a game. Probably 3 of them are screens. And if he wants more, then play better. Lose 5 pounds. I'm sorry, because Ayuk is playing so freaking good right now. And so is McCaffrey.
Right. And I mean, the reason that when you look at the numbers right now, Ayuk has 55 targets on 8 games. Samuel has 54 on 7 games. But the reason those numbers might be elevated twofold. One, the 49ers were throwing the ball 40 times in some of these games, rushing only 16 times because they had a one-dimensional rushing attack that purely didn't work when Jeff Wilson was there. 2, they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. So imagine you're now going to run the ball a lot more, and you also have another mount to feed in the passing game. That's going to not.
He just got 8 catches last week. Exactly. He just led the team in catches last week. Yep.
So that to me is going to no problem. But that to me is going to make it a more explosive offense, but also more questions to answer as to who's getting the ball.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem with the Niners offense this year was that they were overusing Deebo. They were using Deebo like he was the Deebo from last year. And he's not. He missed the whole offseason program. He's still sort of getting into football shape. And if you give him 9 targets, he'll drop 2. Like he'll still have like a few good plays, but it's not an efficient 9 targets. And if you look at the end result, I think the quarterback rating when targeting him is 70. So that just kind of speaks to them not quite being on the same page. All right, well, then take a little off his plate, get back to what's working, and then build from there. And I think that's great, because if McCaffrey wasn't on the team, they couldn't do that. Because as great as Ayuk is, they don't really have the quarterback to fully take advantage of him and to say, okay, we're running the offense through Ayuk. No, you can't. You're running the offense through your running back. You are, until you get a different Quarterback, head coach, and offensive line. You're running your offense through your running back. And so, Deebo, you're not a running back anymore.
Yeah.
Hope you like those screens.
I guess he's not. And I mean, if that value's there, I had a question, and I mean, we might get too ahead of ourselves, but I had a question in the offseason to fans who really clamored they wanted to pay Deebo Samuel. I was of the group that we should. But is Deebo Samuel worth $25 million a year when one of the main values that he had last year was a runner, and you don't use him as a runner anymore? Because fans said, well, next year we're going to scale down Deebo Samuel's rushing numbers because we want to keep him healthy. I understand that. I understand keeping your best players healthy. But if you're taking away one of the assets that he provided to get that money, do you think that he's worth that amount of money?
Also, what the Niners do a lot is they'll pay a player based on his best season, which happened to be his contract season.
Mark Armstead.
And project.
Mark Armstead. Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo, Deebo. And say, you know what? This level of play that he attained right before his contract, right before this negotiation, is what he's going to maintain. And we're going to pay him based on that projection. It's like, why don't, first of all, it hasn't worked out like that for you guys very often. And second of all, why take that leap of faith? You know, there are structures in place, like the franchise tag, that you can get some more evidence and say, you know what, if you do it 2 years in a row, we'll pay you. But the Niners are always like, nah, you know, we want to take care of our guys and we're a happy family and we don't want to piss off. It's like, okay, well, you still have to take care of yourself first. It's still a business. And I think a lot of people could have seen this coming with Deebo Samuel, you know.
I think so. Anyway. I think so.
Yeah.
And I mean, I personally would not be surprised if he gets traded within the next 2 off seasons.
Right. I haven't looked at his contract recently. It's probably pretty difficult to.
It's difficult.
They probably wouldn't save much money at first. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's like if they have to, because they don't have to pay Ayuk for 2 more years, right? They don't have to. They have a 5th-year option.
Because this is his third year. You have a 5th-year option, so they're only going to pay him. Well, they'll extend him after his 4th year, but that extension only kicks after the 5th-year option is done. Yeah,
and the 5th-year option isn't cheap, but it seems in 2 years they'll probably have to choose between 25-year-old Brandon Ayuk, 26-year-old Brandon Ayuk, and 29-year-old Deebo.
29-year-old Deebo Samuel. Yeah,
that's an easy decision. But we'll see we'll see what happens. Injuries, such is football, all that. Let's answer a few questions. Arturo Ramiro says, can you do us all a favor and stop talking over your guests? Wait your turn. It's really annoying. Thanks. By the way, go Niners. I get excited. I'm very sorry. And that's why I keep apologizing to Rohan. I'm sorry. Rohan. No, it's not Rohan. Rohan. I keep saying it like you're like Dominican or something. Rohan. I'm tripping. Yeah. It was Johan Santana when I was a kid. Johan Santana. He was hella good. So there's Johan, there's Rohan, there's Zohan. These are very important people in the history of the world. Are there more people? Do you remember Johan Santana? He was lefty. He's probably before your time.
Of course I do. Of course I do.
Hella good.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And I won't talk over you anymore. Novin says, skip my last message. Damn. I'll find it. I promise. I will. Rohan represents the younger, hungry reporters. Oh, not only does he represent, but he's the one. He's Neo. He's the one. Ethan says, check CMC injury history again. Never needed a surgery and was overused in Carolina. He's not injury prone. Just got unlucky like any running back not named Gore. Okay, well, you can't necessarily. What I would say is, yes, he wasn't injury prone before those 2 years when he got injured a lot, multiple times. And now the question is, at 26, at the position he played, have these injuries taken a toll, and will they lead to more? I don't know. I hope not. You don't know. I guess we'll find out. And if he has a long, durable career like Frank Gore, as you said, then this will be a slam dunk, grand slam,
most definitely,
home, all that. Mix all my metaphors.